but I want to talk to you tonight about one of the major issues that was such a catalyst in forcing and making the eruption of this movement and America's reaction to the Obama administration. Look, the healthcare issue has become a major dominant force. We all know about taxes and spending. You hear about taxes and spending and government policy more than you ever have before. Thanks in great part to new media, to the internet, to Fox News, to talk radio, and freedom of speech. I think Americans are talking more today about government policy than I ever remember in my lifetime. And I'm an economist, I'm a policy guy. It's just a fabulous thing to see. But one of the first issues, if you remember, that sort of began this eruption across America was something called cap and trade. Right? It's a term that really 3 years ago no one even heard the term cap and trade. And it was one of the great motivators of the Tea Party movement. Well, many of us here, if not all of us, can take a great sigh of relief and comfort in knowing that we stopped the cap and trade movement on the national level. And that took enormous resources. It took enormous efforts. It took a big investment by donors, a lot of work by activists, a lot of media work to turn the tide of this world falling for this climate change threat as a motivation to implement a really destructive policy. And if you think back only 2 years ago, it seemed inevitable that this was going to happen. It just couldn't be stopped. Everybody believed in cap and trade. Well, everybody, I mean, starting with this man. Chris?
The debate's over. The science is agreed upon.
The debate is over, and the science is in.
Arnold Schwarzenegger, right? Only a few years ago, they were going to change the United States Constitution so he could run for president. Arnold Schwarzenegger, the debate is over. The science is in. It's all in. It's done. We know what we got to do. Cap and trade. Let's go on. Republicans and Democrats holding hands. Republicans and Democrats really holding hands on this issue. Watch this one.
Hi, I'm Nancy Pelosi, lifelong Democrat and Speaker of the House.
And I'm Newt Gingrich, lifelong Republican, and I used to be Speaker.
We don't always see eye to eye, do we, Newt?
No, but we do agree our country must take action to address climate change.
He's toast. He's toast. Oh, by the way, he's running around Iowa right now talking about how important ethanol is. So with Republicans and Democrats, that just laid the groundwork for the United Nations International Panel on Climate Change to advance their agenda of income redistribution by depressing America's economy, by repressing our productivity, by driving our jobs overseas under the pretense of this threat called climate change. And it laid the groundwork for the president to boldly stand up and make this statement.
Under my plan of a cap and trade system, electricity rates would necessarily skyrocket.
Why not? So what if electricity rates skyrocket, right? It's just the way it is. What's a few American jobs amongst friends? Cap and trade, as we know it, as introduced by the president, was nothing more than an Asian Full Employment Act, driving our jobs overseas. But across this country, and against the tide of national opinion, against the tide of the media, and against supposedly the science, we went to work to turn the course of public opinion, with organizations like Cato and the Heritage Foundation doing remarkable research on the ground, with economic thinkers on universities across the country, conservative economists, the few of them that there are, turning the course of public opinion. And with us at Americans for Prosperity, starting back in '07, we began a series of what we called hot air tour events across the country, led by our president, Tim Phillips.
Prosperity. We're here in Billings, Montana, on leg 3 of our hot air tour. And we're sending the message to Senator Baucus and Senator Tester to vote no on this job-killing, tax-increasing cap and trade. We're in Fargo, North Dakota, at a great event, one of our hot air rallies. We have a ton of folks here, good speakers there with us.
Well, it was definitely a sight to see at Forsyth Park. The group Americans for Prosperity.
Fargo, North Dakota, South Dakota, New Mexico, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, New York. We did about 120 of these events across the country. And people looked at us like we were freaks. What are you talking about? Cap and trade, global warming, oh my God. They would drive by and point and laugh. And we even had to take on our good friend, You remember this woman, she thought we were absolutely nuts. You don't want to hear what Rachel Maddow had to say about what we were doing back in those early years of overturning the concept of cap and trade. But you know what? You know what? There's a gentleman who I am a student of named Friedrich Hayek. Friedrich Hayek wrote a book called The Road to Serfdom, which I highly recommend everyone read. He's the father of the Austrian School of Economics. And Friedrich Hayek taught us in that Nobel Prize-winning book that in order to change the course of public opinion, you don't have to get to every single voter. You have to get to the opinion makers, so the opinion leaders on the local level, groups like this. And when you start educating those voters on the conservative principles of free market economics and the truth, you turn the course of public opinion. The liberal left works on simply emotion-based politics. Simple sound bites. The icebergs are going to melt. You know, our children are going to drown. That's it. Their argument stops there. It doesn't matter if the science is correct. They appeal to the heart. They don't appeal to common sense. On our side of the spectrum, when we get our message out, the truth, the science, the facts, we win. We win. And we did just that. We did just that. We advanced that message. And we sent cap and trade, we thought, to the ash heap of history. Or so we thought. Until this fellow came along. George Soros, mastermind of the left, the man who has made his billions of dollars manipulating American currency and other currencies, never produced a product in his life. He manipulates currency. Evaluates and devaluates currencies and makes money on the differences in trading those currencies. That's the source of Mr. Soros's wealth. God bless him. But don't turn around and force your agenda on me. So George Soros invested mightily. George Soros made a keen announcement after the cap and trade bill had been defeated on the federal level. He said that we're going to now advance on the state-by-state basis what we failed to do on the national level. Card check was defeated on the national level. Cap and trade was defeated on the national level. But these things can be passed on the state level, state by state, and then knitted together into national policy. And that's happening right now. The dream of Al Gore. Al Gore's dream of cap and trade is alive and well right now, right here in the state of New Jersey, and in 10 northeastern states under what's called the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative, an agenda identical to that proposed by Barack Obama, identical in every way. And it was masterminded by no other than Lisa Jackson. Now, if you don't know who Lisa Jackson is, Lisa Jackson was the former head of the DEP in New Jersey under John Corzine. It was rather prescient back in December of 2009 at the Copenhagen Climate Change Conference when the ambassador from Denmark introduced Lisa Jackson to 1,000 screaming liberal Mimi European diplomats and said that Lisa Jackson's now become head of the EPA under President Obama, and she will do for the country what she did for New Jersey. And that's exactly what Lisa Jackson is doing. The bill that she masterminded, that was passed in New Jersey in January of 2008, and in 10 other states in the Northeast, contained the words cap and trade before the terms cap and trade were even in the American lexicon. And this is how certain they were that they were going to make this bill a reality. In this bill, the New Jersey cap and trade bill, there's a sentence. It's long-winded. Let me translate it. It basically says that this bill is designed to segue into a federal cap and trade program when passed. This was the groundwork for the Obama plan. And how was it passed? This bill was signed in the Meadowlands in January of 2008, and the bill signing was attended by no other than John Corzine, Hillary Clinton, and Republican Minority Leader Tom Kean. Once again, Republicans and Democrats locking arms on advancing the cap and trade agenda in the state of New Jersey. Hey, that was the peak of it. Al Gore was getting a Nobel Prize that year. He was getting the Academy Award. Tom Kean Jr. was right in there with Newt Gingrich and Arnold Schwarzenegger. He wasn't that far off base, and the rest of the Republicans that voted for this bill, this cap and trade bill called the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative. Then the Heritage Foundation came out with that report. The next day, after that bill was there, I had an op-ed in the Record. Yeah, I would appreciate that. Thank you. I had an op-ed in the Record. Excuse me. It's the global warming. It's right now. I had an op-ed in the Record the next day attacking this bill as nothing but a new tax and as a fraud. I was called by Republican leaders across the state. How can you do this? What's Americans for Prosperity doing? And by the way, now that you've attacked us all, you're persona non grata with the Republican Party. And that's a lesson I would learn a year later in the primary, by the way. But it was the right thing to do. When we took on that cap and trade bill, the Heritage Foundation report came out and showed that New Jersey electricity rates could expect to go up by as little as the least 90% by the year 2020. 90%, driving up energy rates through the roof. Now you see this map of the United States with our 10 northeastern states. Now they're going to talk about adding California, which has a cap and trade bill but nowhere to go. So they're going to add California to the New Jersey Northeast Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative. The next step is to add the Midwestern states, who also have their own cap and trade program, but nowhere to trade their carbon permits, since the Chicago Climate Change Exchange closed in December. So there's that statewide effort to expand cap and trade right under our noses, right, across the country. In December, the Chicago Climate Exchange closed. It was a carbon trading commodity exchange started primarily by Al Gore's investment firm. Report came out Friday that Al Gore and his investment firm, when they closed that exchange, walked away with a profit of $17.6 million. Not bad for a failed entity. But of course, Al Gore and his friends are looking out for our future, right? So, about 8 months ago, and some of you were there, Americans for President, I realized the threat that in the din of all the national attention to health care, to the November election, people had forgotten about cap and trade. People didn't even know that this was taking place right here in the Northeast. There have been 10 carbon trading auctions already in the Northeastern United States. States are required to buy a permit for every ton of emissions that a fossil fuel energy plant, that's gas, oil, or coal, uses, and the cost of those permits will then be passed on to the ratepayer. The theory here is to drive energy rates so high that consumption will be forced down, and of course production forced out of the country. These permits are traded on a top-secret exchange called the RGGI on Wall Street, in which speculators buy these permits. And guess who these speculators are? Let's see, Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, and all the likely suspects, and a handful of unidentified trading entities that are probably some government officials had set up. I mean, look at the money Al Gore made.